So hi everyone, already top of the hour, so we don't want to keep you waiting for the ones who are here on time. On behalf of Premier Continuum, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar series of the Insight series. The Actually, it's the first time that a BCI event is sold out, so we should be seeing more and more people join us. We're very pleased about the fact that this topic really interested many of you. We do have if ever you know of people that were not able to attend because the event was sold out, remember that a recording will be available that we'll put up on our website very shortly. My name is Mary Helen Primo, and I'll be your host for today's session. I'm Executive Vice President at Premier Continuum. Actually been working in the field of business continuity for more than 20 years. I'm also an instructor for the Business Continuity Institute and was a former president of the BCI Canada chapter. And in 2023, I was honored to receive the BCI Consultant of the Year for the BCI Americas Award. So our insight sessions are all about sharing knowledge, exchanging ideas, exploring practical solutions tailored for resilience professionals like you. We want really this to be very, engaging as well. So we hope that this session will inspire you, equip you with addressing challenges. And if you do have any questions as we move along in this great session, don't hesitate to use the chat feature as well as the Q&A area, and we'll be monitoring them. So either if you have comments or if you have any technical issues, don't hesitate to reach out to our team here at Premier Continuum. So from policy to practice, how to make business continuity part of your organizational DNA. So the key elements that we'll be covering in today's session are how do we learn to integrate business continuity into your organization's culture to go beyond compliance, discover practical steps to transform a policy into a lasting commitment embraced at all levels of your organization, and see, effective strategies to cultivate a strong, resilient organization like deeply rooted tree. And we'll talk about that metaphor in a moment. So just a few words on Premier Continuum. These topics are really at the core of what we do. And we've been helping organizations to meet those challenges for over 25 years. And really our mission is to increase organizations' resilience. At Premier Continuum, we do this thanks to 3 complete solutions made by seasoned experts. So we have with our BCM and resilience management software, Para solution, expert consulting services, as well as certified training through the Business Continuity Institute, as well as ICOR. And to that point, I will talk, I want to introduce to Margaret Millett, one of our instructors at the Premier Continuum for the Business Continuity Institute. So Margaret is a global thought leader in our business for over 2 decades. She has worked with big Fortune 300 companies, helping them build a BCMS, and she was recipient of the prestigious BCI Lifetime Achievement Awards in 2023. And as I said, is now an instructor with us. So now the moment you've all been waiting for, let's talk about embracing business continuity with Margaret.
Wait, thank you, Marie Helene. I really appreciate the kind words. And you actually made me 10 years younger. I've actually been doing this now for over 30 years. So thanks for making me younger. Hello to everyone around the world. I am very excited that Premier Continuum has asked me to come talk to you today about embracing business continuity and making it really part of your core culture and how you need to do that. Now, as I speak to you, most people think, and those who know me at conferences and think, oh, she's really outgoing. But in reality, I'm an introvert. And so when I am working at big companies that I've worked at, I've worked for 10 large organizations that are in the US but have large global footprints. And, one of the things that I realize is I need to become a salesperson because I need to get out there and really promote my program. So I'm going to say to everybody who feels like they really are not a people person, start to embrace it, because the one thing that you need to do is get out there and be the best advocate you can for you, your team, and your program at your organizations. It's very instrumental for you in terms of being successful and getting your program to where you really want it to be within the company, as well as to meet the needs for clients, the regulators, etc. So get out there and start and feel more confident about selling the benefits of your program. You could go on to the next slide, Marie. So one thing that I'm going to say is there are many elements of building a program, as you know, and it was, shown previously on the slide that there are all aspects of building a program. However, the one thing that's really great about the embracing the business continuity is this is where you get to touch upon it in all aspects of building your program. And so the one thing that I am going to also say is take some time and really start and define what you want out of the folks who are going to help support your program. And that's really getting down to also talking about the roles and responsibilities. Now, I'm just going to use some generic terms. You might use things differently at your organizations. But for example, I'll have somebody that I might ask to be my business coordinator, and that's the person who does the job every day. And then I'll have somebody that's the business continuity manager, and they oversee that function as well as many other functions within a department. And then I'll actually have the plan owner. They usually are somebody that's at a vice presidential level. They're the ones who are going to be the one who's going to actually approve the plan and making sure that anything that the department's going to need is going to be at their disposal in order to be able to continue to be resilient. But I also tie that into the policy. I won't name individuals, but it's very important to outline what you want those folks to do to help support your program. And the other thing I'll say in terms of writing a policy, make sure it's for the here and now. If you're going to implement something Q3 of this year, don't put that in your policy, because if you get audited today, the auditors could be like, where is this? And you'll have that as a mark against you that you don't have that within your program. And the other thing that I'm going to just say is it's really important to take a look at the regulations that are part of where you are within your organization. I've worked for 10 organizations, and everybody comes to me when I start a new company and they're like, you must be an expert on rules and regulations. And I say, I am not. And the reason is there are so many rules and regulations around the globe that there is no way I could possibly know everything about all of them. But here's one good key thing that I will share with you. All the rules and regulations that I've looked at are fundamentally the same. They want you to have a risk assessment, a business impact analysis. They want you to have continuity plans. They want to make sure that you are doing training, education, and awareness, that you are doing exercising, that you have the right folks who are going to help support that program, that you are meeting with senior leadership, and that you are reporting any issues that have arisen within your program in this year, and that you are marking them down and working against closing them out. So that's one thing I will say to you is rest assured that I've not come across anything that is not fundamentally there. Now, I've worked at a few organizations where some of the rules and regulations have had a few nuances. I've done a lot of work in Latin America, and one rule I came across is Mexico had one regulation that required that they had to do an earthquake exercise every year. Well, kind of makes sense. Mexico has a lot of earthquakes. They want to make sure that the business is going to be resilient. So what I'm going to say is, if you read underneath, you'll find out you're there, but there might be something that's a one-off that you need to do in order to continue to do that. But then you also have to be the bearer of the truth to folks, because people in Mexico were like, oh, great, we only have to exercise against earthquakes. I'm like, well, no, you're going to do that. And we're going to do a few other things to make sure you're resilient. But continue to make sure that you are doing those things to make sure that you're going to have a successful line of business, no matter where in the world that you are operating. Because I've worked at companies where I've had to support resiliency in 40 to 65 countries. And so what I'm saying is there's a lot of rules and regs. Just because I've worked for US-based companies, I have to make sure that we're compliant in the rules and regs where we operate key lines of business. Next, please. Now, I'm also going to just say this. I have worked with great folks in my career who are what I'm going to say my dotted line supports. But it's also interesting to try and get them to want to embrace business continuity. And so that's where I say it's up to you and your team to take them on that journey. And it's not just your team of the folks that are the dotted line, but it's also your executive leadership team. Because I've worked at some organizations and it'll be like, oh yeah, my colleague next to me, they used to do this thing called business continuity. And so I'm somewhat familiar with it. Or I put the plan together at an organization once many years ago. But it's also been interesting in my career where I've worked with people who've worked for 2 or 3 organizations, and then they've had to go out and talk to them, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I actually was sitting there scratching my head saying, how could it be, say, 2025, and somebody who's in a regulated line of business hasn't had to touch upon business continuity? And so you do need to stop and say, this is what it is, and even set that level playing field for everybody that's already been doing it, because you want to tell them what business continuity actually means at the organization where you're running your program. And, it's okay also sometimes to take them on that journey, take that opportunity. I always say, get together with your team and figure out how you want to go sell yourselves. So go get that mission statement, go get your vision, go get what you want to have as your tagline of, resilient today, always here tomorrow, or whatever that is, and make that your slogan. And work with the marketing department at your organizations. They're happy to go create an internal logo with you. I know budgets are tight everywhere around the world, but see if you can go get some golf shirts made that when you do your exercises, whether in person or on Zoom, you're promoting it. Share information. There's something happening every day around the world. So go get an internal communication channel going that you can share articles that's happening around the globe that might impact you or one of your competitors. And also really listen when you are attending town hall meetings with your executives. Pick up on what's the latest thing that they're talking about. Where are we going in the future? Where's the new products and services? Where are we opening up new offices? Because that can also help you tie into that. And I know that we're not always going to be top of mind with the executive leadership team. I've been in this game a long, long, long time. It's a hard sell sometimes, but you just got to be patient and get out there. But ask your leadership team if they're doing something in a town hall that, we've just come off here in the United States. I think of the continuity planners that are in the greater LA area. I'm sure that they were working really hard last month. So let's give a shout out to them for making sure that they were there to help support folks. Folks who are in Greece, they may have been helping folks that were in Santorini. Like, there's something that you can do to make sure that you're getting that call out to folks, and make sure that it's there. Because, I'm going to say this. I've also had some folks who didn't want to work with me, and I have one great story. I worked one place and I had a huge EMEA footprint, and we were trying to consolidate data centers. We were in about 25 countries, and we were trying to get down to 1 or 2 data centers in Europe. And I needed a point of contact to help me. And this guy did not want to come work with me. He's like, I got told by the vice president in Warsaw, I needed to come work with you. I'm in Dublin. I got a lot of stuff to do. I don't want to do this disaster recovery stuff. And I said, we're going to make this really easy for you. You're going to find out we're a great team to collaborate with. We're going to try and make this as easy as possible. We're going to have some fun along the way. A year later, he came to me and he's like, your team is awesome. You guys are great to work with. Is there an opening on your team? Can I come work with you guys? And I said, I don't think your boss is going to be happy if I, scoop you up and have you come join my team. But thanks for the word of advice. So that's what I'm saying. If you get out there and you really make it happen, you're going to make it fun, and people are going to want to come work with you. And also try and just tell them what you're going to need, because when people think about, well, I need to get this done, it's not 8 hours out of the day, 5 days a week that you need from them. I need some time here. I need some time there. Spell it out, chunk it out, make it easy, and collaborate with them. That is part of the way of embracing and making it easier for them. Next, please. So I love this illustration. When they showed me this deck, I was like, OMG, I want to copy this deck, because I look at it as you are building and nurturing something. So you've got to make sure that it gets water. You've got to make sure it gets the sunlight. You realize that, you might go through a drought. You might go through a monsoon. You've got to be there to navigate, to get the program up and running. And the other thing that I'm going to tell you, running a business continuity management program, no matter what size your organization is, it's going to have ebbs and flows. I can tell you in my tenure, the average amount of time that I get a point of contact that's on a business continuity relationship is about 2 years or less, because of the revolving door, people getting promoted. They wanted, it was great working with Marie Helene. Let's give it to Isabel now. So like, you're going to always be out there selling yourself. So don't also make sure that your decks are like the same. One thing I always challenge my teams is Q4 of every year of like, hey, let's get together. Let's get a new deck together for the upcoming year, because I don't want to go out if my stakeholder was the same from last year to this year, saying the same thing, because they'll be like, I've seen this before. Why are you telling me this again? So get that new, fresh look out there and figure out what they need, and also tap into your great resources that you have. You might have somebody that really also has a passion in the business unit that might have some suggestions to you. So make sure that you're also doing surveys to get feedback from folks on how you can help make the program that you're running better. But think about this illustration as you're doing your program in 2025 and beyond, because remember, at the heart of it, you've got to make sure that your tree is going to be bountiful and producing all the fruits and vegetables or whatever crop you want to talk about, that it's going to give your organization what it needs to be viable. Okay, we all can say that we've had challenges in our careers. And if you don't think that you have, I want to say, did you know that there was a bridge for sale in Brooklyn that you might want to go by? Because there are always going to be organizational changes at your leadership. And so therefore, sometimes you are going to have to get back and get in the game and get out there and figure out how you can help manage that. And so what I want to do now is help you look at some of these indicators that you might be experiencing in your organization. And I'm going to say this, since COVID and even coming out, and right now, I don't want to talk politics, but the state of the world, we all know that we're probably going to have a roller coaster of a ride year in 2025 with our programs, not knowing what's going to be happening with the financial stability of the organizations that we work in. And this is true whether you work for profit or nonprofit. So I'm going to say this. I will always hear the people will say that we don't have the right prioritization within the organization. Well, that's where you've got to put on your sales cap and get out there and sell them why you need to get this. But I also want to say to folks, when I hear people say that they don't have it, I also ask them to stop and write down and take stock of what they do have. Chances are they have what they need. They just don't have enough of what they need in order to feel like they have the right support from senior leadership. So go forward and put out what you have. Now, I'm also going to say this, do not put you don't have enough staff, because that is the one thing that leadership doesn't really want you to bring to their attention, but yet you still want to talk about it, but you don't want to put that at top of the list. So work on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, your SWOT analysis, and figure out where that all needs to go. But don't start off with that I don't have enough staff, because everybody's going to say they don't have enough staff. So, and remember, there's no money tree. Back to the analogy of the picture we just had. It's not a money tree in the backyard of the organization either. So think about how you want to message it that you are important and you are critical, and starting to think about that statement. Next, Marie. Lack of interest or commitment, and the no ownership, and the shortcuts are taken. So I am going to say this. There are going to be ebbs and flows. If you've just had a major cybersecurity event, you know, they're going to be focused on cyber. If you are worried about a merger and an acquisition, maybe not going to be top of mind, but you still need to make sure that you are updating and working with leadership and really figure out who's the right person who you want to be your advocate on behalf of you. And remember, chances are you're going to have to be the one creating the slides, giving the speaking points, because you know what? The folks who are going to be your biggest advocates are not going to be seasoned business continuity professionals. They're going to need that cheat sheet on what to say and what to ask for and how to go ask for it. Now, on the no ownership, really then work with that person who is going to be your executive sponsor and get them educated on it. You know, I've tried to take my leadership folks on a journey, and not that I'm going to go get them certified by the BCI. However, I have had set them in on BCI courses so that they can get familiar with it. And when I did that at my last organization and collaborated with Marie-Helene to have Premier Continuum come offer training to our organization on site. And that was great because we were able to, you know, talk about things that probably we wouldn't have done if we were doing it in collaboration with people across the globe. So think about if you need to get some internal training just for your company so that you can really like have in-depth conversations with your leadership. And again, they don't need to stay for the whole thing. They might send, you know, you might want to look at what the curriculum is and say, let's have you come for these particular sessions. I know you can't devote the 8 hours for 4 days. So think about that. Shortcuts are taken. Unfortunately, we all know that business continuity teams are not going to be the right size to fit the some company size. It's just not reality. I wish that would change. So figure out where you really need to dedicate your resources to, meaning those critical functions, the ones that are audited, the ones that support customer service, the ones that bring in the dollars and cents or whatever currency you are in. and then figure out how you're going to tell leadership in a nice way. Like, based on the resources and the budget I have, this is all I can serve us. And this is what we're going to do with the ones that we can't, or we're not going to be able to get to everybody. Because I can tell you, having worked for large global organizations, and you're talking 80,000 people in 65 countries, and I've had a handful of people on my team, there aren't enough hours in the day for us to get to everybody. So I have to go say, these are the ones that we are going to go work with. But cover your tracks. Document that you presented to senior leadership that on today, I'm going to say, I'm going to hypothetically get to these 5 areas, and think about how you want to do it. You want to just say, like, for example, I'm going to get to the headquarters where things are across the globe. Got to get those covered. And then I'm going to go to customer service. And then I'm going to go to maybe manufacturing plants. That will be it. So tell the story as to what you want them to know. And then I'm also going to say this, looking back on history at the organization, there's always lots of lessons learned. So I'm going to say to anybody that's changed organizations since coming out of COVID, go talk to enterprise risk management, go talk to internal audit. Chances are there was an in-depth report that was written and presented to executive leadership on how well your organization handled COVID. So go get stuff like that. Or if there was a big event, if your organization was impacted by the CrowdStrike event last August, go get those reports and read through them, because chances are something like that is going to happen again. I'm also going to say, get leadership real that, COVID or something healthcare related or health incident is going to happen. If you go back and look historically, something health related has happened in every 5 years in the world that's impacted lines of business. And then, also I'm going to say, when people say they don't understand the true benefits of business continuity, I'm going to say there are one very important reason why you need to do this. 2, actually. Your employees. If your employees are not able to come in and pick up the phone or process an order or send out an invoice, the money is not coming in the door. Okay. And your employees want to have that peace of mind that it is there. And the other thing is, I always tell executive leaders, I am your insurance policy. I'm the one that's here to make sure that when something goes bump in the night, we are not going to go skip a beat. So think about that when you're talking to your leadership team. And yes, I've worked for a lot of insurance companies, but I tell that to even the companies that I've worked at that are not insurance companies. So think about that. Next, please. Now, like I said, study the environment that you're in and figure out what has worked well and what has not worked well in your organization. And you might have to re-engineer things. And that's okay. The other thing I'm all about is taking a look at your organization holistically. If you know another department's, hitting the ball out of the park on something, then go talk to them. Go get a copy of a slide deck. Go figure out how they've done training and development. Leverage what's already within your organization and get the best of. Figure out how leadership likes to see reports. We all know that the getting it down to one page, getting as much information as possible is required. But if somebody's got a report format that the executives like, then use that. And then also, don't feel like you're boxed into one page. You've got the appendix. Put more additional information in the appendix. They will go look at that. That is one thing I found with the executives. They will look at that. And then, the other thing is find out when the cutoff is for the executives to get their decks. Most executives want decks 2 days in advance of meetings, and they will do their reading. So give them that opportunity and put everything that you want them to know in it. And remember, cover your tracks. So more is better with the executives. And like I said, as long as it's got the summary sheet, and then get it in the appendix. Now, identifying the stakeholders. This is very important. I've worked some major events in my career, and I'm going to just say this. It's very important that you are always reminding leadership of who are the coordinators, the plan owners, or the plan manager, and then the owner and the approver, because chances are they're only going to know, the executive leadership team is only going to know the vice president. So I'm just going to use Walt Disney. If Walt Disney is the plan owner, and then I say Mickey Mouse is the plan manager and Donald Duck is the coordinator, they'll be like, I have no idea who Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse are, but I do know who Walt Disney is. And I feel confident then that we're going to have a great plan for that line of business. But Walt Disney could leave, and then you've got Michael Eisner, who then was once the executive of Disney, taking over. And they're like, I'm not sure whether Michael Eisner is the right person. They might want to move it to Goofy. Because they feel Goofy is the better person to go run the program or make the executive decisions that are going to be needed for that line of business. So every year, make sure you are sharing with the leadership team as to who are those folks, because I can tell you when big events happen, they forget who everybody is, and then they're shuffling the players like pieces on a chessboard. And that is chaos at the time of a disaster. And supposedly, the one beauty of business continuity planning is that you're doing the pre-planning in advance. And therefore, when an event happens, it should be easy, but sometimes it's not, depending on the size of the event. So think about that. Make sure it's getting approved and reviewed with folks so that there are no surprises for you. Also, it's very important ahead of time to figure out what the communication is for your organization. And I'm going to say this also. We work in a world where our line of business is not always glass is half full, glass, or it can be Debbie doom and gloom with things. So make sure that you're not saying that the glass is half empty, that you are picking adjectives that are, what I'm going to say, uplifting when you are talking about communications, so that you don't sound like, you're the Grim Reaper coming to talk about what's going to potentially be happening at your organization. And work in advance with your communications folks, because also communications is not what it used to be. I mean, when I started out in my career, it was just like, let's get literally a memo, a physical piece of paper, and then, maybe a news clip out to the local newspaper so they could know about something. But today we have, ChatGPT, we have instant messaging, we have, internal communication there. We've got Twitter, we've got LinkedIn, we've got everything. So your communication team has got to cover a much wider spectrum of things that are out there within the world. So make sure then that they are understanding what needs to get done, and it's the right style of communication based on the communication channel that you are out using. Okay, identifying the main sources of information. You should be the source of truth for what's happening at an event in your organization. And the other thing is hopefully you are using a product like Parasolution to gather all the information for your organization, so that you're generating an executive report out of Parasolution that's going to say, hey, the office, like I was just talking with Marie-Helene before we kicked off the webinar, and she's saying how it's snowing right now in Montreal. Well, if it were a blizzard, Marie might have to be giving her executive leadership, if she weren't her own boss, to a company in Montreal to say, here's what's happening. Here are the lines of businesses. This is what might be impacting. We might need to switch operations, say, from Montreal to Vancouver. Vancouver is now just coming online just because they're 3 hours behind her. What do we need to worry about? What do we do when Vancouver goes offline? Like, do we have an operation that we need to say follow the sun model over to Asia? She would be the source of truth of providing information out of Parasolution so that they could start to review and evaluate all these things. And also, Marie's already done her due diligence in advance of showing her the leadership what this data looks like. So when they get the report during an incident, it's not like it's the first time they're looking at it and saying to Marie, I need my secret decoder ring to figure out how to read this report and the data. And also Marie is giving timely updates. And that's also one thing of like, figure out what that is for leadership. Is it once a day, twice a day? What do they want? We're going to be heading into the weekend. What happens if it's a really bad blizzard? Marie's got to give updates over the weekend. Get all these things planned in advance and do things so that it's not adding chaos to your department and your team, because hopefully, I'm saying this, we work a lot of big events, and I've learned over the years, try not to ask chaos to enter into our team. So try and figure out how to do things, what I'm going to say, in the Monday through Friday realm, and figure out how you can collaborate with others within the organization that might have off hours out there, and figure out those things. And see how they can help leverage your program using your tools. And so, like, if we need to do training on Parasolution to another department, I always want to go do that so that I'm not getting woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning, that they have that information at their fingertips and are able to go out and share it with the folks that are there. Because again, I've worked in organizations that are in Asia, Middle East, Europe, Latin America. No offense, I like my sleep, and I don't want to get woken up if I don't have to. And then, like I said, understand and anticipate the opportunities. There is always an opportunity for you to get a plug in. We work in a very dynamic world. So again, like, I've done a lot of work also and I'm just going to use world events. I've helped support my organizations that have been in cities that have hosted the Olympic Games. So I've worked to get them ready in the event something happens, because, you know, when you're hosting the Olympics, there's a lot of activity going on for 14 days or 16 days and before and after. You know, when you start and say to executive leadership, if we're down for one day due to a hiccup, you know, when you say that price tag, and then it's like, well, I just bought the value of my entire team being out of business for one day in that city. So use that. And I know trying to understand financial data is not always easy just because there's so much, but look at the financial reports for your organization. There is a lot of information that's hidden in there. And so sometimes, you know, you've got to go digging to go do the math, but, you know, you can start and find out some of that information and use that to understand how you can help leverage the importance of your program. And I'm going to say this, it really is important to go back and look at the past. Now, I'm going to say this. There's something happening every day at organizations that we're not going to go share with leadership, because really, if we're doing our jobs right, we should only be going to leadership like once a year saying something bad has happened. But there are a lot of things that go bump in the night, and there's always an opportunity to go improve upon them. And so that's where I'm going to say, go get the logs on incidents that have happened, see how they were rated, because sometimes some departments like to go, let's just sweep it under the carpet. But chances are, if it keeps happening, then there's an issue. If an application is always having a problem at month end, then you might need to be the one to say, we've got to look into this, because if your disaster happens at month end, you then don't want to be telling executive leadership, we've had problems with this application 6 months running. And the leadership will be like, well, why didn't you get it fixed? And even though you're not the owner of the application, it's the holistic approach of you should be collaborating with others within the organization so that they are able to understand how to make things better going forward. And again, you want to do it in the luxury of doing it in a safe environment, not trying to triage it during the actual end of the month processing. So think about those things of how you can collaborate with others within your organization. All right, essential elements for embracing business continuity. Like I said, get it prioritized by top management. Now, get one good person within the executive suite who's going to be there. And people ask me, well, who should it be? It's like, I don't care who it is, as long as I got the person that's going to really be there for me. Off the record, though, I have always gone for somebody in IT, because when you work in IT departments, usually they get paid more than the business side. So I've tried to stay with IT just to earn more money. However, I have worked with other areas. Now, the other thing I'm going to say is, when you still get that executive sponsor from the top management team, chances are you're still going to have to do a little bit of training, education, and awareness with them. And you're going to need to do training, education, and awareness with your other leaders. Now, the other thing I have found, I can create the best PowerPoint slides. I can try and make it as easy as possible for the top management. Chances are, I always say, and if you'd like to have a one-on-one with me on this, I'm happy to go schedule time with you, because the other thing is top management will not ask questions in front of their peers. But as soon as I get them in a one-on-one, oh, the questions come flooding in, even though it's the same questions I'm answering for all their peers. And I just wish somebody would have asked it, because I could have saved myself some time, but that's not going to happen. And nobody wants to be like, I don't understand this. Could you give it to me in, you know, a lower level term? And I try and make it simple. I try not to use acronyms. I try not to, you know, do any of that stuff. When I do my decks, I write it as if somebody's not familiar with business continuity management at all. You know, business impact, BIA might stand something different. I love cooking. So if you were to say CIA, most people think of the Central Intelligence Agency in the United States. I think of the Culinary Institute of America. So it's like, again, how are you thinking of these acronyms? Alignment. Now, you're not always going to get the alignment that you want, but you want to make sure pretty much that if leadership is going down this avenue, and the leadership goals and the buzzword bingo for the slogans are going to change once every year, 2 years, depending on the marketing avenues, you want to get aligned it. So if all of a sudden you're in the town halls and I'm just going to say a silly word, if they're talking jelly beans, you got to work jelly beans into your vocabulary for what you're talking about on business continuity management, because you want to show that you've heard leadership. You want to be one of the cool kids, and you got to go there. If next year, all of a sudden, we've gone from jelly beans to chocolate chip cookies, you got to change your stride, because you want to be in vogue as to where they're going with that. Okay. And like I said, the communications and the interdependencies, that is really key. And also, always remember, if you are working in a large global organization, don't use what I'll say highfalutin words, because they don't translate well. Keep it simple. use basic terminology, think about those things. And also, when you're doing work overseas, I've always remembered this. I've worked for a lot of international companies, and I always think that my peers outside the United States speak beautiful English. And I can barely say please and thank you and where's the bathroom in another language. And I was in a meeting in London, and a guy who I knew very well from the Paris office was there, and we were there for a 2-day meeting. And I said to him, "So, how do you think the meetings are going?" And he's like looking at me, and he's nodding his head, and he's like, "Yeah, they're going really well." And I said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, "Well, I have to process everything in French and then translate it from English to French." And then he said, "So I'm losing part of the meeting." So he's like, "I'm really only getting 75% of what you're saying." So think about that when you're hosting your global meetings. I typically will do things for the international folks. I will schedule an extra half hour just so I talk fast. I know that. I then will talk slower. I will make sure that they're understanding everything, and I will leave more time for questions and answers. So, think about that. And then the other thing is they may need to take the slides and digest them. So I often then will do office hours afterwards to say, "Hey, we're available, say from 8 to 9 or 7 to 8 tonight," so that I can meet your needs, so that if they've been able to then digest that information, they're going to come back and understand it. Now, the other thing that is really important is making sure that the lines of business, not only senior leadership are thinking about business continuity, but if you're building a brand new office, make sure that it's got the generator, it's got, all the, what I'm going to say, stuff that's easier to do at the beginning than going back and retrofitting. That also applies with applications. I've worked at organizations where it's like, okay, we've got a new HR system, and I'm like, great. So you got DR, right? What? Yeah, I'm like, "Do you have disaster recovery for that?" Yeah, okay. So, or then they want to buy cheap capacity. I'm like, "No, we got to make sure that it's going to run peak capacity." Peak capacity is usually the fall, right? When it's fall enrollment for benefits and all that. Yeah. All right. So what's peak capacity during the fall open enrollment season? And we want to make sure that we're not going to have the system choke when we've got the employees trying to do that. And they're like, "Oh, that's going to cost an extra $5,000. I'm like, but get those checks and balances in along the way with all of your strategic partners, and so that when they are figuring out things. And I think the other thing is again, I don't want to go down the avenue, but really make sure you're also tied in with your vendor management of asking the due diligence questions on new vendors that you might be onboarding, and make sure that you're providing the expert questions on crisis management, business impact analysis, risk assessments, plans, education awareness, exercises, how they're reporting things, and how they're going to communicate with you. Because disasters don't happen at Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. No, they happen at 5:01 on Friday. And, you don't want to not be able to reach them till 9:01 on Monday. So get out there and figure that out. And then remember the support. You have a plethora of opportunity to get great tools like Parasolution. You've got great internal resources. You've got webinars like this. Figure out how you can help support your organization by figuring out how to make it better, and also leveraging what's being done in other parts of your organization and how you can collaborate with them. Because that's the other thing that leadership is going to want to see, is that you have collaborated with others in your organization. They don't want you to be just an island out there. All right, key enablers. I'm going to say this again, marketing. Get out there and figure out how you're going to get out there and market to people. Make sure that when you are doing things, you've got your logo, you've got your tagline, that everything that you are doing is out there. And every opportunity, whether it's, doing a training session like on Parasolution for how to go do a BIA, or you're doing an exercise, talk about the aspects of the program. Make sure that it's getting out there. The employee experience, get them on day one when it's employee orientation. Make sure that you have a plug in there about business continuity management, and that how they have it, and how there's probably an emergency notification tool. The only way that tool is going to really be successful is if you, the employee, has their current contact information on file with the organization. Now, Marie, if she were, at a big company in Montreal, might be sending out a notice today because there's a blizzard. However, it's not always the big things that you're going to see looking out your window. If Marie all of a sudden in July 18th, there's a pipe that burst in her organization, and she needs to send a notice out to folks to say, "Hey, don't come into the office today," and you don't have your current information, guess what? You're probably going into the office and are not going to be happy when you arrive and find out that, oh, the office was closed today due to a water main break. So make sure that folks are getting out there. And also, CYA on this one, cover your tracks. share with leadership or have HR share that data with the heads of the department, because when it's a major event, chances are a lot of the employees and the contractors will not have that data in there, and they'll come looking at you like, Marie, why don't you have all the data in there? And it's like, I don't own the HR data. Somebody else does. So ask HR, partner with HR, and ask them to share that with you. And this way they can then work with their employees to get them to update it. But if you're not sharing that information of how many employees actually have their phone numbers on file, make sure that that's getting shared to make sure you're covering your tracks. Now, patience and perseverance. I'm going to use a sporting analogy. Hopefully you're all familiar with American baseball. An American baseball, in the game, you get to go to bat 3 times. And you might get a hit, you might get a home run, or you might strike out. The beauty of a baseball game is you go to bat multiple times during the game. Now, you might strike out every time you have an opportunity to go to bat, but that's okay. There's always going to be another game, and there's going to be another season next year. You have to be patient in this world with being a business continuity professional. And back to the tree analogy that we shared earlier, sometimes, again, I have to plant that seed and I have to water it, and it might not grow quickly, but it will grow in time. So therefore, make sure that you are continuing to be patient and persevere, because it will pay off in the end. All right. Again, make sure that your organization leadership is giving this the priority. Make sure that, like I said, your executive leadership is talking about it as needed during town halls, that your own executive sponsor or your head of the division in which you work in is talking about it, because chances are, I know they manage many other areas, but you want to make sure that you're getting the due diligence, and also ask them. I'm going to say this, I've seen this in my career. We're always the last ones in the deck. That's what I've also started to say with the chiefs of staffs. Can we mix up how this is getting done? Because if we start to run out of time, oh, guess what? There's the business continuity slide. So ask if we can share the wealth on the real estate of the decks, that we're shuffling things around so that we're not always last. And the other thing that I'm going to say is get out there and ask other people within your team to go out and talk about your team. I am all about getting my team to the next job. So when I go do stuff, I will introduce them and I'll be like, okay, and now I'd like to have Marie Helene talk to you about whatever. And then I hand it over to her. And then I'll be like, great. And if Marie can't answer a question, she'll be like, hey, Margaret, and I'll jump in. But other than that, I wanted them to know who Marie is, so that when it comes time for getting people promoted, they'll be like, who? No, they'll already know who she is. Executive sponsorship with an adequate budget. Spend the time to create a great budget. Put in that you want to have a pizza party for the local business continuity chapter. You want to do this. You want to go have training with Premier Continuum. You want to have Parasolution. You want to go to the BCI World Conference. If it's not in there, they don't know about it. And it's okay if you don't get approved for it this year. Put it in year after year after year, because it's part of covering your tracks. Or if you want staff, put that in, because again, if all of a sudden there's a major event and they're like, you didn't have the resources, well, like I've been asking for staff for the last 3 years, but due to budget cuts, we couldn't do that. So again, put it all in. Put it all in. All they can do is say no. So, but if you don't put it in, then you have nothing to go back to stay on your ground. Now, make sure that you are working to understand the value of the business continuity, because I can tell you, I've worked for a lot of organizations where companies and clients want to know about your state of resilience before they sign on the dotted line. I've helped secure big deals for companies and some of the organizations I've worked with who were coming to buy insurance products. I've worked to get big companies to sign online to go do Uber for Business. Because a lot of organizations have started to tie into Uber, so that when you land at an airport, you just order an Uber and it automatically is going to go populate your expense account. So again, you want to make sure that you've got a sound business continuity program so that you can get out there. And I can tell you, I've gotten in front of enough clients and regulators to go talk about how my credentials and what I've done for the program, and they're like, yeah, we're good. We're good. I just got to see this, or I got to know that. So get out there and make sure you are doing it. Now, the other thing that I'm going to say, always budget in more time for how long you think things are going to take. If you think something's going to get done June 1st, say you get it done for August 1st, buy yourself a little buffer time. Don't be like panic that it's May 29th and it's like, oh my God, are we going to get there in 2 days? It's better to deliver on time and under budget, than over budget and off time. So think about those things when you are doing things. You will look like a rock star. Also, remember that you are probably going to need to be your own best advocate for writing your own reviews and getting your team promoted, because I've talked to people and they think I'm automatically going to get promoted. And I'm like, nope, not going to happen. You've got to be out there yourself. And make sure that you put into your budget that you want to have an external assessment done. Now, not every year, but probably every 3 to 4 years. And also ask that you have internal audit do an assessment. Now, I know everyone's probably cringing, like, why did she say internal audit? But remember, they can be your friend. And also make sure that you are educating them along the way so that they understand what you are doing in your program. And also continue to remind them that you might need to train them, but they can only audit against what's in the policy. Okay, so we are coming to the magic hour of this winding down. Remember, as I said at the beginning, you need to be the ones out there advocating for your organization. You need to show the importance of the value of why you're there and seize every opportunity to go figure that out. There's also internal kudos awards. Like, what is it that you need to do, or what do you need to start to go do to make sure that you are continuing to strengthen your organizational resiliency program year over year? Keep track of it, what you're doing. I'm going to say this: most organizations I know, the calendar of reviews goes from January to December. You're not going to remember what you did in January, so just open up an Excel worksheet or a Word doc. Start and throw in 3 key things that you did every month. So when you have to go write your performance review at the end of the year, you have it. You want to be able to sing those songs about how the wonderful things that you did. So I have always done like an H1, H2 report to sell leadership of all the wonderful things the team that I've worked with have done the first half of the year and the second half of the year. So again, they understand the value of what we're doing. And then, like I said, make sure that you are engaging with all the stakeholders when an event occurs, because there's going to be a lesson to engage and learn from. Now, you don't need to be like literally there during the moment, but make sure you get the debriefs afterwards, because you're going to learn from that. Use those tools as of lessons learned and incorporate them in how you can make things better. Because I'm going to say this, it's like anything. You buy your first car and you're like, oh, I realized I should have done that. By the time you go buy your second car, you're getting better. When you do this time after time, you realize what needs to get done, or you can provide some expertise on how to make it better next time based on what you've seen through your experience, whether at that organization or other organizations. And I'm going to just say this: business continuity is a wonderful profession. I wouldn't have stayed in it as long as I've been in it if I didn't think it was something that was dynamic and evolving, and, really great people that I've met around the world. And I've worked with great people in all the organizations. At the end of the day, everybody wants to do what's right so they can continue to get their paychecks. In the United States, we typically get paid the 15th and the 30th. So, you want to get out there. And I know that, we are also under the microscope for compliance, but you know what? That's not going away. I know there might be talk that some regulations might be going away, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be regulations that are going to need to be adhered to around the globe. And so, do what's right for you. And if it's not just for regulations, like I said, chances are your clients are asking more about it, and you need to also understand it about the vendors. We are not islands. None of us are islands. We need our vendors in order to be able to turn the lights on at the organizations where we work at. So I want to say thank you to Marie-Helene for asking me to come to this event. Huge shout out to Premier Continuum for inviting me, and to the BCI for hosting this. So back to you, Marie.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for this insightful presentation. I took on lots of nuggets. We'll have time for questions. Just a few words before we move on to questions, and there've been some questions posted in the Q&A as well. So really, we mentioned that Margaret is one of our instructors. There are, key classes that are offered by the BCI as well as ICOR. And, if you're just starting in the field of business continuity, there's a CBCI course. It's a 4-day course where you have instructors such as, Margaret, with so much of experience to share, to guide you through the process. And there's actually a new course that's called Stakeholders Engagement for a Resilience Professional, was newly released last year. So I really encourage you to look into that. If you do want to have more information, you could visit our website. And just in terms of awareness, it's not quishing. It's a real QR code here that we have. And again, before moving on to questions, as we actually will have another webinar insight. It's a sneak peek to our upcoming topic on May 15th. Elaine Como is also one of our seasoned instructors, and it's going to be on the myths and realities of a good business continuity plan. So I invite you to register soon so that you're not caught up in the sold out of the sessions. So any questions? I know there are some here. And please don't hesitate to add a few, but really, when I was looking at when you were talking about the value that we bring to the table, how we can sell business continuity, it's same for me. If if I hadn't been convinced about the value of business continuity, I wouldn't have stayed in this area, and you get to know so much about what's going on in the organization. So if people are just traveling through business continuity, at least they've gained such great knowledge of what's going on, and they can then see where they want to also participate and within the organization. And your keyword as well regarding, using jargon, we're using too many of those MTPDs and BIAs, make this understandable in plain English. What are we doing? I know it is a challenge because we're used to our terms, but really make
Yes.
sure that is the case. There's a question here regarding, indicators for an organization that's just starting in BCM. So, what would be things, we did talk about indicators for the actual program, how successful it can be, but just to know if we're on the right track, would you have some words of advice on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. I worked at one organization that was a very well-established organization, and I thought I was inheriting a huge, well-oiled machine on a business continuity program. And I got there, and there was nothing, nothing.
Mm.
It was words on paper, and or numbers on paper. So I went and I met with internal audit, and I just said, can I get copies of past audits? And basically, they hadn't really been conducting any. So I said, they had a new audit team lead and they wanted to come in and do all this stuff. I'm like, just give me a year and a half. I need a year and a half. I need to get this program set up. I'm happy to meet with you to talk about. So the first thing I would tell you is, again, figure out from top leadership what they think is critical, because you might not have the resources to go do BIA. So most leadership, I'm going to tell you, you would think they'd be able to say these are the top 5 things that we do, but they can't. And if you don't understand the organization, you're going to need to say, I need to go do a business impact analysis so I can figure out what's here. You can also go look at the financial reports, I said, and figure out those things. But I always tell people, you have to crawl and you have to walk and then you have to run. And a lot of people want to get to run. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is building a business continuity management program is like going up a set of stairs. Um, you know, I don't care whose philosophy you look at on how to go build a business continuity management, it builds upon each layer. And the executive leadership team and the board of directors and audit is going to be like exercises, exercises, exercises. Well, you know what? That's the last step. And so I mean, I remember in gym you had to do long jump. Well, there's no way that you're going to be able to do a long jump vault from the bottom of the stairs to the top of the stairs. So you need as your expertise to say this is what we can do in order to continue to evolve. And that's why I'm saying spend the right time with on what your strategy is and work with your team to determine what that strategy is. Because if you're getting Paragon a Parasolution on board and you're trying to build a team and you're trying to figure out all these things, you've got to have time to put it all together. And so I'm going to say, really use the indicators to start and look at what you need, what you've inherited, and where you want to go, what your budget is, what you're going to be realistically able to do. And also, if anybody's asking you to put together a 5-year strategy, I'd say that's not really going to be feasible, because technologies are going to change, the players are going to change, the direction of the company is going to change. I now typically have only done strategies that are 2 years out.
Yeah, it's you were talking about COVID earlier. We didn't expect this to be happening. So, we've already been 5 years into that. So,
Yep.
2 years is definitely, good horizon scan,
Yeah.
horizon. And there's questions regarding, how to tips and tricks to organize a successful BC campaign. Um, so business continuity
So
campaign.
I'm gonna say I really have valued going to work with my marketing department. Getting a logo for your department based on your company Inc. level logo, that has created so much talk at the companies I've worked at because we added to the email signatures, we included on all of our documents, and people are like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. What can tell me a little bit more about that?" That actually has bought us so much goodwill. And then we get the logos, they give us the JPEGs for the email signature, the PowerPoints, all that stuff. It really has helped buy us a lot of traction with our stakeholders. The other thing that I can say that we did, which I think is really a quick, fast, and easy way to go do things, is like I said, go get the Slack channel going with all your stakeholders around the globe and share an article about something that's happening today. So again, a month ago, it could have been, hey, here's a great webinar that I think that you might want to attend that's being hosted by Premier Continuums. You might want to sign up for that. The other thing is like, oh my gosh, just look what happened at our competitor yesterday. That could be us. Go share that. Or, the LA wildfires. Oh, wow, there's an election in Timbuktu where we have operations in a month. I wonder how that's going to impact us. I was just recently in Saudi Arabia, and they're going to be hosting World Cup. Like, what happens if we have operations in Saudi Arabia? What do we need to do if we're going to be near the stadiums? These are the things that you want to start and share with them because it gets the aha moment going. And the other thing is if you know that there's like the local business continuity chapters, there's ACP, there's the BCI chapters, there's a whole host of things. Start and share with them because if folks are in those cities, they actually might go to one of those events in person, and that helps them broaden their horizons too.
Totally, it doesn't need to be formal. So,
No,
taking those opportunities just to stay on the radar of the
right.
elements that are
And if you have Para Solution, they can add your company logo and your business continuity logo to the website, to the page.
Of course, of course. And in terms of, there are also some questions regarding operational resilience and business continuity. This can be an entire topic of a session. We actually did a webinar back in June of 2024 on that topic of what's operational resilience. But I don't know if you want to take try to get, a few moments to talk about the difference between operational resilience and maybe clarify to different stakeholders what that can be.
So, I'm going to say it is a challenge to make this work at large organizations. And the reason is, if you look at operational resilience, it's bringing, all the areas that are going to help support an event. So it could be HR, facilities, security, information security, the application people, the key lines of business, HR, marketing, you name it, it's all of them. And, you'd like to think that, we're going to bring everybody together and this is where the executive leadership can get in the way, okay? Because they'll be like, that's my territory. We're going to do it our way, and we don't want to play in the sandbox. So I'm going to say this, continue to evolve towards it because at the end of the day, also executive leadership does want to see that you're collaborating with everybody else. And we do need to do that because, we all go to executive leadership, okay? And I'm just going to use 12 and say that, I have managed 3 of them. Marie manages 3, somebody else manages 3, and somebody else manages the other 3. So executive leadership is going to get to in a room and say to Marie and I, like, what the heck's happening here? And they might use another adjective, but they'll be like, why aren't you guys working together? And so that's where you've got to at least show that you are doing things because Marie's talking about risk and I'm talking about risk and we aren't talking about risk in the same manner. They're going to be like, well, Marie was telling me last week that risk is this, and now you're telling me it's that. Like, we have to sing from the same sheet of music. Otherwise, leadership's going to think like, what the heck? I pay you guys all this money to go do things. So start and have these discussions about bringing things together and collaborating and also making sure that things are getting looked at and people are understanding how we can come together at organizations that I've worked at recently. I've tried to do a lot with the security teams because they are 24/7, 365, where my team is not. So leverage those that are the 24/7, 365 and figure out how they can come together with all the data and really then start and understand how they can bring in the right players at the right time and that we can show leadership that we do have that united front when an event occurs. But this is the patience and perseverance as well.
Totally. Well, thank you very much, Margaret, for this really insightful session, and the clarity you gave to that difference between operational resilience and business continuity. If we haven't had the chance to go through answer your questions, we'll follow up via email, and please don't hesitate to reach out to either Margaret or myself if you want to, continue the discussion further. So, well, once again, thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and we'll be sending out to everyone who participated the deck as well as the recording if you wanted to listen again.
Thank you, everyone.